I'm Lindsay Lovell. I'm head of marketing at Dayshape. I've been with Dayshape for 2.5 years, and I've seen a lot of exciting change in the resource management profession during that time. So, on that note, today we'll be exploring Wolf and Company's journey to centralized resourcing from the very start of their resource management maturity journey, the benefits along the way, and how technology has enabled their centralized resourcing strategy. Wolf is a top 100 US CPA and advisory firm, and I'm joined today by Christy Phelan, who's been leading their resource management transformation journey. Over to you, Christy, to introduce yourself, please.
Thanks, Lindsay. Hi, everyone. I'm Christy Phelan. I work with Wolf and Company PC. We're based out of Boston, Massachusetts, and have employees nationally. I have been with Wolf for 20 years now. December will be 20 years for me. I started getting involved with resource management, or back then we called it just scheduling, about 3 years into my employment. And yeah, I love it. It gives me a lot of flexibility. I get to work with a lot of people throughout our firm, and looking forward to sharing some of our day shape experience with you today.
So, with that in mind, let's rewind 3 years ago, Christy, when you were in I guess it was about 3 years ago when you were in stage one. What were your main pains then?
Yeah, good question. So 3 years ago, before we implemented day shape, we didn't really have a strong system that worked for all lines of service. So some of our teams were still working in spreadsheets. Some were working on spreadsheets for just their individual clients. So there really wasn't a lot of visibility into who was doing what, who had capacity, who was, overutilized, just all those questions that we have when we get into resource management. So the biggest pain was really reporting. The system that we were using, we did have some reporting, but it was strictly, coming out in PDFs. It was clunky. We didn't really get a lot of data that we can use with the reporting that we had in that previous system. So really just, finding a system that worked for all lines of service was really critical for us. It would give, something that gave our engagement managers the economic data that they wanted, but also inform practitioners of what their day-to-day schedule looked like. So, we had a lot of things that really were on our wish list when we decided that, our previous system wasn't working for us and it was time to look for something new.
And you were a team of one RM at that stage. So if you could just paint a bit of color of kind of how large the firm was at that time and kind of how you as a solo research manager was able to kind of get the buy-in for this project.
Definitely. So I would say we were probably hovering around 200 employees at that time, maybe slightly under. I don't really recall exactly where we were at, but step one was really just listening to people. So, we had been hearing that our prior system didn't work for certain folks. So some of the teams that were using a scheduling tool, were complaining that it didn't give them the data that they needed, right? They couldn't forecast if they had capacity to pull in, a 500-hour job or a 2,000-hour job. Um, and it really became, enlightened to us that we needed to look for something different. So it was kind of like, all right, who do we need to involve at this point? So, I connected with our data analysis team, connected with our IT team, and then really just started talking to our line of service leaders. So the head of our audit department, the head of our tax department, our risk management team. We have 5 different teams under that umbrella as well, and really just talking to those folks and understanding what isn't working currently. So when started looking at new systems, we knew where we wanted to go. So we got a list of those pain points, kind of um, pitched that back to our executive committee, and then we put together like a small committee with reps from each of our line of services, along with myself, along with IT, and along with our data services team. And then we really just kind of started getting out there and looking at what resource management tools were available. What were the differences? What were other CPA firms around our size using as well. Um, we made a list of about, I don't know, 10 or so resource management systems that we were looking into. And then the committee that we put together, we started creating an RFP. We dug into what is critical to have with our resource management tool. What are the must haves? And then, on top of that, what are the nice to haves? So we kind of consolidated everybody's needs and wants from each of the lines of service, and narrow down our list to about 6 or 7 resource management tools that we eventually reached out to, started getting demos set up. And really it came down to customization, the ability to integrate with our time and billing systems, also to integrate with Salesforce that we use for our client data. We really wanted a tool that was going to help us look into the future. We didn't want to go through this whole process of a system conversion and then 2 years from now realize that this tool that we picked was now outdated. So we wanted something that created like a future proof solution. um, we also wanted a tool where um, the vendor philosophy and culture kind of fit with our philosophy and culture. We wanted it to feel like it was more of an extension of our own team when we were going through this um, conversion as well, and really just knowing that the people that we were working with were real and not just kind of yesing you to death, like, oh yeah, sure, we can do that. We heard that a lot with talking to different vendors, when we had questions come up, hey, can we do this? Oh yeah, sure, we could do that. But from day shape we really felt like they were listening to us and not just saying yes we can do that, but like, I'm not quite sure, let me take that away and think about it and get back to you. And so we really felt comfortable when we selected day shape throughout our journey. And then just having a vendor that understood resource management, not just the product. A lot of times when we were meeting with potential vendors, we heard a lot about what the product could do, but having somebody that really understood resource management and worked in that field that could help us, like, hey, here's a problem I have. I want to see how much PTO time somebody has booked or how much time they have left over. What does this impact? Having a team that also understood what resource management is and how to answer our really specific questions when it got down to the nitty gritty was really important to us as well.
Very kind words. Thanks, Christine. And yeah, thinking about that yeah, the future proof thing is important, and yeah, I think it's easy to kind of think in the near term, and that does display a lot of like maturity to be thinking about the future. And but if you think about the near term, the sort of immediate benefits, so when you kind of were able to progress into that level two, yeah, what were some of those kind of immediate benefits that you could realize?
Definitely. So at the time, I didn't know anything about the RMI. I didn't, we weren't following any kind of maturity framework. It was really once we, partnered with Dayshape and got in front of other clients, and started talking and having, some just like vendor discussions. The RMI was brought up a couple times, so I started searching that to see, where should we be. The immediate benefits after implementing Dayshape were obviously like the reporting and scheduling time that was saved was an instantaneous like improvement from where we were. Previously, I would have to run several reports for different lines of service on, availability reporting and, a week by week client report for each of the managers. With Dayshape, those reporting duties really went away. It was super easy to get everybody using the system. Previously managers and principals were not getting into a scheduling tool to take a look at their clients. They were relying on me to really say, here's what you have in the field this week. Here's your schedule. Now go with it. With Dayshape, the ability to, really just save different views and create your reports and pin them right on your dashboard and find them easily. That was an immediate win for us, and able to drop about 90% of the reporting that I was doing weekly was cut off my schedule and allowed me to kind of focus on higher level things. um, Being able to assign things in bulk versus one at a time was definitely an immediate improvement that we saw right away. Having a list of what jobs and what projects are unassigned at the time, and having that right there within one view directly within the Gantt, and being able to easily, you know, say, hey, I have this booking that I need to assign for this week, and having the Gantt right on top of it and seeing who has the availability to, fill that requirement in one view was another immediate um, benefit for us as well, because before it was really difficult to have them either side by side, or I was working off of a spreadsheet telling me, here's all of my work that's unassigned. Now I have to go find people that have capacity. So having that done right away was really huge. And then just an increase in billable capacity for our managers. We didn't really have a good view into what the manager's workload was, what that equated to in hours, where those hours were being spent. So understanding, where our managers were spending their time, and, you know, where they had capacity to take on new business, or if they were, overloaded, just like our other resources. So those were a couple of really immediate benefits as we were moving into that second stage of the maturity model.
Yeah, 90%, I think you said, of reporting time. That's, yeah, so much time saved. Crazy to think that.
I
Yeah.
couldn't even tell you the last time like I ran an availability report, because everybody can just get in the system, click on their, favorite report and see the availability right for themselves. So it's been really nice not having to do that.
Yeah, we've heard, I think it was, yeah, sort of yesterday, I think it was Wade saying, technology is not the silver bullet to your problems. And yeah, even as a tech vendor, I totally agree with that. And you do hear that process change needs to come before the technology change. But I think that can be a bit chicken and egg, because sometimes you don't realize what could be improved until you've got the technology to enable it. So yeah, how did you approach that sort of chicken and egg situation early in the journey, especially because it's not necessarily pragmatic to map out the entire process before you get started?
Definitely. And is being a, resource management office of one person, you really don't have time to, you know, develop the processes ahead of time, right? It's always playing catch up, and it's always, we just have to fill this staffing requirement or do this, that, and the other thing. So we did have a technology tool. We just knew that we needed better technology. The system that we had was not supporting our multiple lines of service. It wasn't supporting our growth. So since reporting and visibility into capacity and utilization were our main pain points, we just knew we needed a better resource management solution. So we definitely didn't want to lose what we were currently doing. That was kind of the bare minimum needed to have some sort of resource management, but we needed more functionality, even if our processes weren't there yet. So, if you have your processes in order, that's great. But you really, for us, we didn't need to have the processes all developed before bringing on a new technology, because we kind of had an idea of where we wanted to go. And Dayshape really helped us realize what new processes, we needed as we got into the system. Once we implemented it and really got in there and started understanding the power that was, ahead of us, and available to us with this new system. Things like um, resource requests used to come through an email to me in a spreadsheet that was attached. And at the beginning of the cycle of rolling forward jobs, I would get all these spreadsheets that had each of the jobs, here's the hours I need for my senior, my staff, and whatever, and all the time frames that we needed. Just kind of managing that process manually with the spreadsheets, and inundating my inbox Um, Knowing, that we now have a system where we can submit schedule requests right within the system and I don't have to clog my inbox. And so again, we didn't have to have all of our processes developed ahead of time. And, having day shape in place really helped us identify what processes needed improvement, which ones we needed to start implementing because we never had them. And, maybe some old processes that we needed to get rid of because they really weren't relevant anymore because we had this powerful tool in front of us. Um, Also just being involved with the RMI community and learning best practices and what's going on in the industry. And the combination of those two together have been really powerful in helping us along our maturity journey.
Yeah, and one of those processes that kind of was revealed to you kind of through Day Shape and the RMI was this topic on, yeah, centralized resourcing. So yeah, if you can just talk to that a bit, sort of how did you secure buy-in for that and move the status quo towards, a centralized system?
Yeah, definitely. So, really through speaking with other day shape customers and being introduced to the RMI, um, when we started day shape we were very siloed. We had, one person was kind of managing our audit team, another person managing the tax scheduling. We didn't have conversations interdepartmentally what was going on. So once we brought on day shape, it really just opened our eyes to the benefits of centralizing scheduling. um, Finding people with skills that are needed that might be outside of our specific team. Currently we are a hybrid mix of centralizing and decentralized. So our audit and tax lines of service are centrally scheduled, led by myself, and I have one other person that helps me with that. But our risk management team still has their own schedulers, which are typically a mix of senior managers and even principals. Um, it's really hard for people to let go of their control of how they want to do things. But there has been buy-in. We're still developing what the process looks like. Really just putting it in front of our C-suite and the people that are doing the scheduling right now. Again, they're client service professionals. Their time should be dedicated to client service tasks, not the administrative duties that resourcing has with it. So, you know, putting it out in front of them that, hey, this is the billable time that you're spending working on scheduling that could be focused elsewhere. Um, Demonstrating to them that, there won't be this resource hoarding. So we heard some of that yesterday. The managers, when managers and client services professionals are responsible for doing their own scheduling and resourcing, of course they want to work with the best of the best. Everybody wants to have the same senior on their team, or everybody wants to have this particular staff because they know they're going to get it done and they're super friendly and the clients love them. But that may not be the best person for that job because they don't have the right skills, or maybe they don't have the availability. And they just want to say yes to everything, and they're doing their favorite manager a favor. So understanding that, taking that discrepancy away from the managers and really putting it on an RMO demonstrates the fairness and from the employee and the business point of view. So we can, look into giving employees exposure to other teams if they're, potentially sitting on the bench for the next week or two, digging into what the other teams are doing. So if I know I have an auditor on the bench for the next 2 weeks, but we have a really big project in our internal audit team, I can easily, loan out our resources across lines of service, filling that business need rather than having them benched, taking the bias out of scheduling. Just again, understanding that yes, everybody wants to work with the top performers, but you're not always going to get that. There's a business need that, needs to be fulfilled, but there's also, an employee need that we can't just burn people out because they're the best resource. So, really just matching the project to the resource rather than, playing favorites and resource hoarding. So, our goal is to be 100% centralized within the next 1 to 2 years.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Lots of different points there to take to the C-suite. Let's dive into the fairness and bias point a bit more. How has that improved over the past couple of years?
Yeah, definitely. So, originally we were lacking a skills database. So the first thing that we knew that we needed to do in order for our, especially our risk management team, since they're kind of the decentralized team right now, um, for them to feel comfortable and confident in handing over their resourcing to an RMO, we knew that we needed a skills database. Like I said, I've been with Wolf almost 20 years. I know the audit team like the back of my hand. So I have all that information in my head, which may not necessarily be the best place to keep information. And same with the risk management team. They knew what their people were capable of. They knew what skills they had, what projects they could be put on, and what they couldn't. So I basically needed a way to get that information out of their head and into a database. So, we started looking at what skills we wanted to record for each of the teams on our risk team. Um, some of the skills were the same across teams, and then there were some that were unique to each team, and that's okay. And we didn't want to keep it in a separate tool and like toggle between the two when we were trying to match our projects to the skills that our employees had. So, really involved a lot of meeting with the schedulers from each of the risk management teams, developing, a list of skills that we wanted to record, and then storing those proficiency rating for those skills right within day shape so that we can, say, hey, I need, a staff level 2 that has like BSA lending at, a level 3 proficiency. So having that all within one system really takes the guesswork out of matching the right resource to the right project. As one of my risk management manager said, it makes it more idiot proof, which we say here. We needed to take that guesswork out of it and not just look at, hey, we're going to throw this resource on this job because they have capacity. That's not the right thing to do. So we wanted to get away from that reactive scheduling and really just look at the proactive scheduling and matching, following along with the RMI, that the jitter, finding that the right resource at the right time. So building our skills database, we kind of went back and forth. And I know we've heard that best practice for RMI is to have the employee fill out a survey of what their skill level is. But yeah, we really wanted to take the fluff out of it. And we didn't want to have the back and forth of this person rated themselves a 3, they really should be a 1, or so and so might be really modest and they're giving themselves a 2 rating when really they're a 4. We knew that with our strong coaching system that we have in place at Wolf. Our coaches really know our people. They've had those discussions with their coachees. So we decided to, put the task on the coaches in the upper management to kind of validate what the skill proficiency level was for each of the things that we wanted to get on record for them. So, it helped us efficiently and effectively like get those skills in a system right away so that we could move forward, driving that centralized scheduling piece of it a little bit quicker. So, yeah. So I think the skills is really the big thing that is getting us to um, look into that fairness and taking away the bias out of the scheduling piece.
Yeah, the two together are then really powerful because yeah, you've got that fair, objective resourcing and then amplifying it across the whole firm rather than just each team benefiting from that.
Yeah,
It's like,
definitely. And it's super easy to present something back to a manager or a principal when you're staffing their job and you say, hey, you asked for a resource with X, Y, and Z skills. and grade level and availability, and day shape right there tells you, these 5 resources are 100% match, or these 3 resources are a 90% match. And here's why, like maybe that 10% isn't there. So being able to, look a manager in the eye and say, this is why I'm putting someone on your job. It may not have been the resource they requested or were thinking about when they proposed on this engagement, but it literally matches 100% of what you're asking for. That's why this tool is super powerful and taking that bias away.
So what's next for Wolf and Company?
Yeah.
Oh,
So next for us is kind of, phase two is building on that skills inventory and not just recording, what skills are needed to do your job, right? Everybody's hired to do a specific job. There's requirements that they have to meet. But what is their, what's their preference, or what are some skills that they have outside of what they do day to day? Maybe someone in our audit team used to work in tax and it's not really relevant to what they're doing now, but they have this skill from the past and it's still relevant for what we do somewhere within the firm. We really want to break out that phase two survey, now that we have the manager's input on where our employees are with regards to the skills that are needed to perform their day-to-day job. We want to hear from the employee themselves. What skills do you have that maybe we haven't looked at? We want to get that on record. And what are your desires to work in different industries or on different types of projects? Again, maybe you were hired to work on employee benefit plans, and that's really where you've been assigned. But hey, you're mastering those skills. What else do you want to see? Do you want to work in the healthcare niche, or do you want to work on, some FI? Who knows? So again, with that employee engagement as well as the business need, we want to kind of match those two and gather more data and really just look at the employee as a whole, not just where the business need is. So, recording that and getting that within Dayshape as well. So, again, we can look for those assignments that may come in that match an employee preference. And, also if there's something that they absolutely hate working on, we definitely want to be mindful that we're not sticking our resources on every FI job that comes in the door when, they've expressed for the past 3 years that they hate working on FI. We don't want to lose a talented employee because we're not giving them the right projects that match with their desires and their career growth and where they see their development going as well. So, anyone who's attended the RMI symposium last year, or, I think on one of the breakout sessions yesterday, it was brought up again, like people like working on cool stuff. So we want to make sure that we're giving them the cool stuff that makes them happy.
mhm. Yeah, it's
Um,
like crossover.
yeah, you
Yeah,
know,
management.
again, yeah,
Well,
kind of building off of the skills inventory, it's really collaborating with our learning and development team as well, identifying where we have a lack of a certain skill. If we look at our staff grade 2 level, let's say, and a big part of that year is getting involved in loan eval testing. If we see that, hey, our staff grade 2s this year, we don't have anybody that has mastered loan eval testing. Maybe we need to beef up and get some more training in this area. So kind of using that skills database to also identify where our bench has, too much strength or not enough strength, and really tailoring our training that's needed, to kind of, get everybody to the level that we need them at. And also look at any skills where we have too many. We don't want to have too many people with a particular skill if we're not bringing in that type of business anymore. And we also don't want to invest in trainings where everybody's already maxed out at that skill level. Everybody's pretty much an expert in that area, so it doesn't make sense to invest in training this year for that skill. Really just understanding that the resource management tools really do affect all different areas of the firm, and starting to collaborate in that way and looking at our resources holistically.
Yeah, we keep banging the drum, we being Dayshape, and I know RMI do as well. Like resource management is so much more than scheduling. So there's good examples of having an impact on the overall effectiveness of the organization. And yeah, it's a good reminder as well of just how fast actually you've matured resource management. I think it's quite easy to, be at level one and just think, oh gosh, there is just so far to go. But yeah, you did that as a solo RM for a large part of the journey in a mid-sized firm. And yes, I think you're demonstrating that it's not just for big organizations. I guess what advice do you have to impart to people on this call that are kind of that similar size in an early stage maturity to kind of get that pace that you've achieved?
Yeah, definitely. So obviously, before Day Shape, we were kind of stuck at like stage one. We entered around stage two and took about 2 years to get to stage three. And we're quickly moving on to stage four. I would say a stage a year is amazing. Resource management is always changing. Don't get down or think you're too immature in your resource management cycle to start or get moving. It is possible. So I would say just get different people on your side, help them understand like why it's critical to move up the maturity model. So again, resource management impacts the entire organization, not just the client service facing folks. We have our finance team is getting into day shape and running reports looking at forecasting so they can anticipate, what our revenue is going to look like over the next 6 months. We're using it for recruiting and having meetings with our recruiting team to identify, hey, right now is not a good time to bring on new people because we have excess capacity. But, 6 months from now, we're in a crunch and our people are maxed out. Getting a new scheduling system in place, getting those people on your side and really showing them throughout the maturity model like what different impacts you can have is really critical. And again, there is no such thing as our company's too small, we don't need this. Again, it really does cover so much, and takes away that day-to-day kind of administrative time that you're putting into moving resources around or trying to figure out capacity planning. It's all like right there in front of your face in one system.
I've got a question in the chat, a
Yeah.
two question, so I'll save the second part of it for the last slide because I think it will segue nicely. But the first part of that question, which relates to my next question for you, did you have any unexpected challenges with the day shape implementation? And my next question for you is kind of what's your main lesson learned and what would you do differently? So if you can just speak to either those expected or unexpected challenges and how you dealt with them.
Yeah, definitely. So as far as like any obstacles with the day shape implementation, obviously any system conversion is never perfect. I'm not a systems person, I'm a resource manager. So this really, being involved in the implementation from beginning to end kind of opened my eyes into what all goes into a conversion and an implementation. Just even understanding what systems can connect to each other and where you're pulling data from, right? So I would say not necessarily, we had a pretty good idea of what we needed to get through. The biggest obstacle we had was testing. Not being a systems person, I didn't necessarily know like what we needed to test ahead of time to make sure that all the integrations were running smoothly or the data that was coming through was accurate. So having somebody on your team that understands the systems that you're connecting to is really really critical. So that was definitely our biggest obstacle. And I will say, at the end of our implementation, we had a debrief with the implementation team at Dayshape, and they were super responsive to any feedback that we gave them. And I've talked to people that have done implementations since then, and it sounds like testing was one of the things that they definitely took to heart and provided much more guidance in the next implementation.
So yeah, we've got a few questions rolling in. Before we get to the just finish up with a recap really of the benefits because in stage one, it was mainly around consistency and efficiency, and those gains have become more strategic as you've matured. If you want to kind of talk to a couple of those, and we can get on some questions from the chat.
Yeah, definitely. Having better visualization into the utilization and capacity is huge. The tool has really helped me in being able to say no to bringing in new work, which we never want to do. But as we heard this morning, a couple of years ago with COVID, with all this attrition that was going on, the market was really hard to like retain people and find resourcing. Before, I didn't have that visibility into, whether or not we could take on work. I would just get something thrown in front of me saying, I have this new job, I need 2,000 hours, you figure it out. So now having a tool that really gives me that insight, like, and to be able to tell somebody, yeah, I can't take that on now, but I can in 3 months. We have staffing that can take that on 3 months from now. Or really understanding, hey, I can shift some work out and make that fit. The fairer, unbiased resourcing has been huge. Really looking at, matching the right resource to the project has really gained efficiencies for us. We've seen better realization. We've seen more employee satisfaction because they're being put on jobs that they want to work on. They've been able to have a voice in what kind of projects they work on. Again, understanding that there's a business need that is there as well. So, sometimes, we're going to be put on projects that we don't necessarily like to do. But as long as somebody's looking at the fact that this isn't what we want to do full time, one off is okay. And then again, I'll just highlight, giving people like in finance what they need. Finance is able to get into day shape and again take a look at where we're projecting 5 months from now. What does it look like for our augmented, third party that we have hired? We have them in our system as well, and they're able to project, hey, our augmented team is going to be spending 700 hours from April to June or whatever the case may be. So again, being able to pivot and understand that, things aren't going to go maybe as you had planned, or something else might kind of come up that's more important than you had thought along the way is really, critical as well.
Thanks, Christy. So yeah, let's go through these questions. The first one I'm sure is directed at you. Do you feel day shape is scalable? But I can't help myself but take that answer. Yeah, obviously you can get your opinion afterwards, but yeah, absolutely. Like the power of day shape is in its scale. It's built for firms that need that scale, that have got complexity and disruption as well. So we've got three levels of AI. The first is manual, where you, as Chrissy said, you've got the suitability scores and you're manually allocating work based on those scores, and you don't have to do one job. You can do one job at a time or one task at a time, or you can bulk, allocate work. As Chris said at the start, that saves quite a lot of time. The second level is looking at all of your unallocated work, all of the resources available, and making all those complex decisions in seconds, and it will spit out this is an optimized plan across the entire workforce. That would take days for a human to do that, but the autonomy is still there, that the resource manager is still reviewing that and making, like, accepting that or making tweaks. And then the third level that's in development is taking into account work that's already allocated on the Gantt, so that you've basically got this constantly optimized workforce. And yeah, it really enables that centralized scheduling, because it's not just for your team. You can filter. It's completely configurable of who you want to see, and that's just the scheduling. There's also, got financials and reporting in there as well. But yeah, I couldn't help but take that answer, because yeah, the scalability is what we do.
Yeah, I would definitely echo all of that. And that's one of the things that we again looked at the beginning. We didn't want a resource management tool that was going to die off as we continue to develop. So we were definitely forward looking and knew that we wanted something that would continue to grow with us and that we're not even maximizing yet anyways. So it's highly scalable.
There's a question about the coaches when you're talking about skills. And the question is, are those coaches a part of the team's leadership, or are they part of the HR training departments?
No, they are part of our team's leadership. Every employee in the firm has a coach. They are typically someone that is direct reviewing them and, yeah, working very closely with them day to day.
And were there any unexpected benefits of the day shape implementation?
Of the implementation, um, yeah, I would say we knew originally one of the things that we were looking at with wanting to move forward with having a skills inventory was we knew that Dayshape had the availability to house that for us. I guess we didn't really expect to understand how powerful it was once we started getting into being able to toggle off certain skills, like what's important, like what's absolutely necessary, what's a nice to have versus a need to have, and the power behind really finding those like matches and having that suitability scoring behind everything. I think that was definitely an added benefit that we didn't realize how powerful that could be.
Got 2 minutes, but there was one last question that sneaked in, so a quick answer so I don't get cut off. Do you have a cap of billable hours you assign to your resources per week to accommodate team or department meetings?
So again, that's where Dayshape is highly configurable. If you wanted to set your chargeable capacity um, weekly at 35 hours, so you could have 5 hours of administrative work. You can do that. You can do it by resource. I have resources that work, only 16 hours a week and they only work on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I can customize their specific schedule so that only Tuesdays and Thursdays are allowable to be scheduled on. So it's completely customizable if you wanted to set how many charge hours per week you wanted somebody to work versus having like some administrative time as well.
And that concludes our chat today. Thank you, Christy, for joining me and being so transparent about your transformation journey. You've done a great job explaining how technology has supported that process and how the two go hand in hand. To find out more about Dayshape and the product, visit dayshape.com or you can find us on LinkedIn by searching Dayshape. I hope you have a great day and thank you very much for listening.